It's social distancing at the chamber, also known as Happy Hour with Hammer. As always, we are joined by the CEO of the Arizona Chamber, Glenn Hammer. My name is Garrick Taylor. This is campaign season. We're going to be on this story from here until Election Day, and that is the damage that could be wrought by Proposition 208. Glenn, I wanted to talk to you today. Yesterday, we talked about the state's regional and national competitive standing if Prop 208 were to pass. Let's take another out-of-state lens on. Let's put another out-of-state lens on this story. We learned today in a story in Chamber Business News, shocker, very few donations from individual Arizona contributors coming into this campaign. Looks like it's really coming from big interest groups from out of state.
This story that Chamber Business News broke, Arjun Ranla, what a really great piece here. Very important piece for people to read. The vast bulk of money has come from special interests from outside of Arizona. So Stanford Children Incorporated in Portland, Oregon has been the prime funder. Over $4 million reported thus far for Proposition 208. This is not some sort of Arizona homegrown effort.
You did not see, well, let me back up. Every year at the legislature, there is always a good, healthy, and necessary debate over education funding. Sometimes as part of standalone bills, sometimes in the context of the state budget. But that's a conversation that takes place in Arizona. And I know you've got your own concerns about the state initiative process, but surely it was not intended as a playground for out-of-state interest groups.
Absolutely not. I can't imagine that the people who drafted the Arizona State Constitution could have imagined that outside groups could get something on our ballot with very little at least financial participation from Arizona residents. It just doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to me. And, you know, not surprisingly, that's why one of the reasons why this initiative is so badly defective. Yeah. It would completely change Arizona overnight, our reputation as a pro-job creation state into a high tax state. And it has no accountability. It's somewhat of a mystery, really, how these dollars would go out. It has creative definitions for words that used to have a pretty set meaning, and we'll talk more about that perhaps in another episode. But here we are in Arizona, Garrick, working year in and year out to get more resources with good reform into our K-12 system. What were we working on during the pandemic? We were working on the third installment for Governor Ducey's 20 by 2020 program, as well as some of the additional funding for K-12 education, as well as for our higher education system, which is basically completely neglected by Proposition 208.
You know, this is going to, if it were to pass, it would do such damage to Arizona's competitive standing that a cynic might wonder if there was some real mischief afoot here, because an out-of-state group that wanted to knock Arizona down a peg really could do some damage here.
Well, I was on a call, we're not the only state with initiatives. Unfortunately, we're the state where it's the easiest to get on and the most difficult to change, no matter how flawed. But one of the initiatives in the middle of the country would also have a tax increase that would harm that state's competitiveness. And that chamber exec was asking some of his fellow chamber execs from the region, could you please endorse this to make the case that, in the middle of the country, people could go to one state or they could go to another state. Right. And, that's another point, that not only would this make us a top 10 state in a bad way in terms of income tax and the effect on small business, but what it does regionally is it obliterates a big part of what has made this state so attractive, and a big reason why our budget has been going up each and every year, and our population has been increasing to make where we are, both of us right now, we're in the fastest growing county. in the country. That music stops if this were to pass.
This out-of-state aspect, it really becomes an issue if, well, Glenn, I want you to put yourself in the shoes of an economic developer from the Commerce Authority or GPEC. As it stands today, you've got a great story to tell. I've got to imagine, Glenn, the story gets a lot harder come January if this thing passes.
Sure, Garrick. What if you're an economic development organization in Texas or Colorado? What do you say? Just keep on moving. If you're leaving California, and that migration is going to continue. I mean, jobs and people are going to leave California. You know, we're both big sports fans. You've got a lot of free agents in California. It's just like free agency. They can come to Arizona. We want them to come to Arizona, or they can go to another state. And everyone knows, every single one who's a serious economic development professional knows that if you dramatically jack up your tax rate that hits the entrepreneurial folks, small businesses, you're going to give them a reason not to come here. And you know, that would be really a shame.
Glenn, you've talked about the fact that a state's top income tax rate, it's a little bit like the BMI when you go in to get your physical. That's the number that folks look at. Could you share with our viewers an anecdote that you heard once from the former governor of Florida, Rick Scott? He's in the Senate now, but you mentioned you were at an event once where he was just peppering people with his elevator speech.
Well, it was the state chamber group I'm part of meets twice a year, almost every year in Florida. And then Governor Scott, now Senator Rick Scott, greeted every chamber executive, and he asked them a couple things. So this is in January of each year. So it was January. 3 questions. What's your temperature? What's your state income tax rate? And when are you moving to Florida? So I've always felt great saying our temperature is perfect in January. Our income tax rate, it's not 0, but it's very competitive. It's in the top 10 in a positive way. Mm-hmm. And I'm not moving to Florida. So, you know, but I did invite Governor Scott, if he wanted to come to Arizona, he'd be more than welcome to. That indicator is very, very important, Garrick. And that's, you know, again, you take a look at the states that have also been growing very quickly in population and jobs. Texas, Florida, Tennessee, mm-hmm. You know, just, you could look any region of the country, that low income tax rates are a key driver for a state's economic success, period.
That's what strikes me about one of the arguments that's made by the proponents is how few taxpayers would pay this rate. And I say, as Lee Corso would say, not so fast, because it has real damage on a state's ability to attract and grow jobs, especially the entrepreneurial class that creates so many jobs. It could be extremely risky, very risky.
And let's also remember how many Arizonans work for these small businesses. They're not corporations. They're set up in a different way with our tax code. Our friends from Arizonans for Tax Reform Association, ATRA, put out a really powerful report that suggests over half the people who work in the private sector in the state of Arizona, we've had Sean McCarthy on the show, are working at companies where you could have this pass-through type arrangement. That's a lot of Arizonans. And Garrick, we're on Zoom right now. Why are we on Zoom? We're still in a pandemic. So we're still at a situation where Arizona, like every state in the country, has suffered a loss of jobs. The last thing in the world we need to do is to make it more difficult for our small businesses, our Arizona small businesses, to operate successfully and to keep people on the payroll and to bring people back who have been furloughed because of this challenging time.
You know, we're going to get into this in a future episode, but this is a reminder, just like you talked about, that Arizona's economy, thank goodness, we're better off than some other states we talked about, that nothing's guaranteed. It's still somewhat perilous in this pandemic. But this is a highly volatile section of the tax code. You look at the way small businesses have been whacked in this pandemic, and we saw what happened to this segment of taxpayers in the recession. And the idea that we would hitch our wagon to this segment of the tax code to fund education, boy, Glenn, it really raises the question whether that's the wisest move. We would emphatically say it's not.
That's a great point. This is the most volatile section of our tax code, and again, we are going to continue to fight to put more dollars with accountability into our entire education system, not just K through 12, our community colleges and our universities. But this out-of-state funded effort is the wrong way to go. It would destroy so much of the good that we have done as a state, and it's going to be important for us and others to make the case to voters to reject this Portland, Oregon funded initiative.
Yeah. Not a lot of good news stories coming out of Portland these days. So add this one to the list, for better or for worse. All right, Glenn, thanks for tonight's episode. We will continue to stay on this beat to ensure that this measure goes down to defeat. We'll catch you on the next one.
Thanks, Garrett.